Welcome. We are going to be making some clay stamps today. So there's different ways to do this. And what the aim is here to make stamps that will make impressions in the clay. So this clay here is actually a cone 10 clay, and it's an off-white clay and Australian. And we are in Australia here in our studio up in the mountains of New South Wales. And this video goes out to engaging in counseling, psychotherapy, and layers of behavior support. So behavior support includes a sense of counseling for relationships, how to cope with social relationships and issues. And in all of these examples, clay work is really helpful. We do clay work under the umbrella of counseling, psychotherapy, and that means that we work with emotions, how we view things in life, our values, how we cope with day-to-day pressures, stress, anxiety, so many of these issues. And clay work really helps a lot with these because when we work with the clay, it symbolizes and expresses our physical and emotional energy in a way that's really quite helpful. It kind of takes what's inside of us and expresses it in some way in the clay, in what we make, in the shapes we make, and what they mean for us. And sometimes clay work is just simply relaxing. The science behind clay therapy is fascinating because it suggests that it is really all about psychotherapy. In that sense, we don't work in the field of art therapy directly. We work as counselors and psychotherapists and behavior specialists, and we use clay work and other types of creative endeavors. My business partner, Dr. Dwayne, he works with gaming with people with autism and other clients, and his gaming therapy is focused on using that third element of therapy to work with the client's reality and how they perceive life and what their values are, what they enjoy as well, and using gaming as a medium, as a way to express feelings, frustration, goals, strengths, interests, all kinds of layers there. And as a forum inside which he can work with his client around relationships, social pressures, learning social skills. Gaming's a fascinating area. And so it's very similar in the sense that we're not gaming therapists per se. We are counselors and psychotherapists and behavior specialists that use these elements to enhance the therapy, to make it more effective for a person who needs that third element of the therapeutic process to engage in deeper work that's more directly relevant to a person's life, to what they're going through. So making impressions in clay, like we're going to do today, we would take a piece of clay and form it into a ball or an oblong shape. And we could do this with our cone 10 clay, which actually needs to be dried slowly, then needs to be put this extra clay in the bag to keep it moist. The cone 10 clay needs to be dried slowly. So when we dry it, we might put it under a sheet of plastic like that and just cover it up like that so it dries kind of more slowly. Air will still get at the clay, underneath that plastic, but the clay would dry a little more slowly. That prevents cracking in the clay. So then this clay, as a cone 10 clay, would need to go through a bisque fire. And we specifically use a bisque fire in this instance because the clay stamp in the bisque fire will be hardened, will be absolutely hardened. What we're doing now is we're forming the base of the stamp. Now, the purpose of that as a therapeutic process actually is really quite interesting. We have to think, well, what would I like to express in this moment? Even as I look at the clay, I notice that the canvas is creating tiny impressions on the surface of the clay. I notice that I've created a little handle. So when this stamp is bisque fired and it's nice and hard then, and I can use it as a stamp to impress into another piece of clay. Maybe I'm making a mug and I might like to press this around the sides of the mug or along the handle of the mug and create a design, a texture on the surface of the mug. Or maybe I'm making a little plate. Like, let's take a look at this plate. I have all of these very interesting objects here to possibly make impressions in clay. Got some Australian seashells from the coast at Coffs Harbour. I have a piece of concrete from the garden that I found when I was digging one day, and it has this beautiful rounded shape and a flat surface on the back with a little crusty bit that stands up. And it's such a simple object. So I thought, wow, that might make a very interesting impression in a clay stamp or directly as an impression onto a clay surface of an object that I'm making, like a mug or a vase or a cup. Could make very interesting impressions. Even the jagged edge around the sides of this could be rolled onto the clay like that and form a very interesting line, jagged line perhaps, which might be very interesting. We just had wiring done in the studio and we now have a light overhead, which is so exciting. I can work out here at nighttime and it's a beautiful space at nighttime. And in the winter, I have a little space heater. So it heats up this little studio. And this was a leftover from the electrician. And the electrician left a lot of bits on the floor, as electricians tend to do. So when I was sweeping up and cleaning after the work was done and the wiring was all put in, I found this little tube, which is a tube that the wiring goes through to protect those wires, those electric wires. And I thought, wow, that looks really interesting. I wonder what that would look like if I used that as a way of impressing into the clay a line shape that comes from this tubing. I don't know what it might look like yet, and I have a small one that could be used as a stamp like that, or rolled along the clay, or even the circle could be an impression in the clay like that. So what else do we have here? A ball for not tennis. What is it? Golf. I forgot. I had a brain freeze. A golf ball. And golf balls have a very interesting surface. It's a very unique surface that's very unique to golf balls. And I bet you, or I wonder actually, if you made an impression with this golf ball on the clay, if people would recognize that pattern and they go, oh, that's made with a golf ball. I'm so curious about that. I'm going to explore that one day, try it on the surface of the clay and see how it goes. It's not a deep impression, I noticed. Yeah, it's kind of a very surface texture on the golf ball. So I wonder how much of an impression it might make on the clay. Might be a very gentle weaving look on the clay. And I would wonder then if I would glaze that, I'd have to be careful because glaze may tend to just cover over that gentle texture, in which case I might try using a transparent glaze on maybe one of our darker clays, like maybe one of these more earthenware kind of colored clays. This is not an earthenware clay. This is actually a cone tin, but it has iron oxide in it mixed in that gives it this beautiful darker color compared to the white clay here. You see, this does not have iron oxide in the clay. Now, we have all of these different things, even bottle tops. I thought bottle tops would be kind of fun to make an impression on the clay. I might even try that on one of my stamps today. So we have all of these things I've collected, which would be normally thrown out, in the recycles or in the rubbish. Even a piece of plastic here packaging that just has some holes in it and it's a rectangular shape. I thought maybe that would make an interesting design. So a bottle top, just a plastic, simple bottle top. A pen of mine fell apart, and I thought, I'm going to keep the parts of that pen. Here's the body of the pen, the top little point of the pen, little triangular shape. I thought, very interesting. I would normally throw that out, but clay work makes me curious and kind of excited about the simplest things in life. I think this is part of its dynamic in therapy, that clay work really is a way to get excited about very simple things in life and curious. Curiosity and excitement and gratitude are really important skills, actual skills that we can learn in our attitudes and values that help us in our life and in our relationships. And these are some of the lessons that we learn through therapy. This little object is a toothbrush that is designed for a puppy. And it's a bit old, so I decided to try to use this as a kind of recycle and see what impressions the little toothbrush might make in a body of clay. Now, I was talking earlier about this plate. This is a very beautiful plate, and someone else made this a long time ago, and I found it at a yard sale. And back in the days when we used to have more yard sales than we tend to now. And they made a beautiful, looks like hand-drawn design on the surface of this pot, this plate, that you might put something nice in, like cookies or treats or sweets or something like that. And, and it has the name of a town in it in Australia named Kempsey. I haven't been to Kempsey, so I've always been curious what might Kempsey be like. That this was designed by a person who maybe lives in Kempsey, who wanted to convey an appreciation for that place. Pottery is very much like that in the sense that when we make an object, it conveys a meaning. It carries a memory. And this is a beautiful memory for me of that individual. Uh, uh, Perhaps a gum tree or a bottle brush. I think it's actually a bottle brush bush or tree that they designed here into this clay by hand. So I thought, I wonder what this would do if I was to impress some clay onto their design, part of their design anyway, press it in and see if it might make another type of impression in the surface of a clay body and see if I might be able to use that. I'm not sure it's deep enough. And, the detail that is in this design is quite extensive. It's quite beautiful, the way that it's drawn by hand into the clay. So in any case, it inspires me to look at that little plate, to think about what other things I can do with clay. Now, this is a fun object. Can you guess what this is? If you're from Australia, I bet you'll know what this little circle of yellow plastic is. For our friends overseas, we can give you a hint. This is from a glass bottle, and it's part of the top rim of the bottle. And when you screw off the top of the bottle, I think it's actually in this direction, the little knobby bits attached to the top rim of the bottle. When you screw that off, this is left on the bottle, and you have to decide whether you're going to leave this on the bottle or you can take it off when you first open the bottle. I like to take it off when I first open the bottle because I'm a little bit autistic myself, and I find if this is left on the bottle, it really bothers me. I need to clear out that space on that particular bottle because I use it in the morning when I'm just waking up and having my breakfast. So a hint for people overseas, another one is this is something that we put on our toast in Australia. Can you guess what it is? Yeah. Well, it's a dark color. It's actually kind of blackish color, almost like the color of coffee. Another hint? Oh, that's a lot of hints. Let's see. It is sometimes compared to axle grease that you might put on your car. Let's see. Another hint. This stuff that you put on your toast is in a glass bottle, has a plastic rim that comes off of the bottle with yellow design. Yeah, a bold print name on the front of the bottle. Those are a lot of hints. Oh my gosh. Now it's another hint. I bet you my Aussie friends could think of lots of different hints for this particular stuff that we use on our toast in the morning. In Australia, it tastes savory and salty. What's another hint? Oh my God, I've given so many hints. How many hints you can count the number of hints that I have and could put that in the comments below. Let's see another hint. This particular substance we use on our toast in Australia in a glass bottle with a plastic yellow rim that comes off, leaving this little rim under that we need to take off the bottle then, that has a salty and savory taste, is dark like coffee, is thought to be like axle grease by some people, although it really isn't. And it has what? Vitamin B. It has a lot of vitamin B. So it's salty and savory, which we need in the Australian climate where it's pretty warm and we have a lot of sunshine. So it helps us with our vitamin B levels and our electrolytes, helps us with our electrolytes. Gosh, I feel like I have to tell you now. Can you guess yet? If you're in Canada or America or in another country overseas, guess what it is? Vegemite. Vegemite. It's a very beautiful substance that we put on our toast in the morning, and we enjoy it very much. We put a nice butter on that toast, Vegemite on top. Some people smear it very light because it's got a very salty and savory taste. Others of us will love it thicker. And I'm one of those thick smears of Vegemite on my toast. And other Aussies go, oh my gosh, that's so strong. How can you eat that? I just love the salty, intense, savory flavor of that Vegemite on my toast. So I kept one of the rims, and I'm going to use that to make Vegemite impressions into a piece of clay or a plate. And it may not look so great, but let me tell you, it will be my Vegemite plate, and I'll use it for my toast in the morning. And maybe I'll combine other types of designs with that circle. Maybe, for example, I might use a seashell from Australia and other objects from the place here. Maybe even this crusty piece of concrete to make designs in the clay amongst the Vegemite circles. So there you have it. There's so many things to put into these designs. Here's an interesting object for some of the men in our audience. And guess what that is? It's the plastic container that shaving blades are kept. 1, 2, 3, 4 kept in this plastic container. Yeah, it's a terrible use of plastic because it's a throwout. But the design of the plastic I found is always interesting to look at because of the little lippy bits, and it's a repetitive design. It's kind of rectangular, and the whole design itself is a rectangle. And I thought this could make a very interesting impression in the clay, depending on how you press that in, and perhaps a design around a cup or along a plate, or perhaps in other ways along the rim of a plate or something like that. Just interesting to experiment and to use throwaway objects like this, again, in a useful and creative way, gives them a new life and a new purpose, I think. And isn't that a great idea? Instead of this ending up in the plastic recycles or at the tip, at the rubbish tip, at the dump, as we say overseas in Canada, instead of throwing that away, find another use for it and use it again and again. So if I can do that, I'll be quite happy. So let me think. This is my first clay stamp that I will have made ever in my life. So I'm thinking that I want this first one to be really simple, and I want to use an object that you would have at home. So I'm thinking I'm just going to use a pen and use I'll keep the pen open, so as if you were to write, because that pointy bit might be an interesting way to make an impression into the clay. So I just want to use a normal everyday object that we have at home. Everybody has maybe a pen or a pencil or a crayon. A crayon would be a rounder shape, remembering, but it would make a very interesting impression in the clay. And I would think that this particular design, because it's triangular, if I press this into the clay, might make a very interesting flower design, or just a simple circular circular design that would make an interesting impression. So I'm going to press that into the clay and see what happens. If I don't like it, I can always redo it. I can try pressing it and go, I wonder if that's deep enough. Maybe I'll try to go a little bit deeper. So I made a deeper impression into the clay, and I'll go around the side of the object and make that impression again and again to about the same depth with the tip of the pen kind of facing the middle, the circle. Not perfect, not meant to be perfect. In fact, we're getting a sense of making an object that's handmade. We actually don't want it to look like it's factory made, or that there's hundreds and millions of these, that you might buy one of these online, these stamps. No, this is a stamp that you'll have in your own private collection that makes an impression into your clay. And you could use this in your air dry clay for air dry clay projects, or you could use this in clay that needs to go through a bisque fire to become hardened. By the way, if I did put this clay through a bisque fire, if I got water on this, once this dried, it would just go back to a powdery texture. And when you wet this, when it's dry, we call it bone dry. When it's bone dry, this would simply deteriorate. It would go back to mud, really. It would be like mud. And so I've gone around the circle a couple of times, and it's made a kind of interesting shape. I could leave the center of this like it is without putting anything there, or I could think of another circular object to impress into the middle part of this, or I could even use the pen itself. I could use the other end of the pen. Not sure I want to do that. I could try it, but how deep I go, this handle on the pen might make an impression as well. If I just want to use a circle in the middle, like a flower, I might only go with a smaller, here's one. This is part of an old pen that fell apart. I suppose too, if I really wanted to, I could take this pen apart. If it comes apart, I'm sure it would. If you pull it apart, I could then use the circle part to make an impression on the clay. But here, I've got an old pen that fell apart, that I took apart, and I've just got the tube body of the pen. And I think that might make a very nice circular shape, and it fits right in the middle of my clay stamp. So I'll try that. I'll make an impression with that into the clay. There you go. I've made a cute little circle into the clay. And I might try to widen that a little bit. Oh, push it in, turn the pen around a little bit inside that circle, make that impression a little bit wider and deeper. So there you have it. That's a kind of a nice shape. And I remember that I had the tip of the old pen. Of course, we got rid of the, what do you call it? The ink cartridge in the pen, this particular pen. The ink cartridge was empty. So we let that bit go, although I could have kept that too, actually, to make impressions. And that would make an interesting line impression, or you could bend it slightly and it could make a nice curvy line in your clay. If I had kept there we go, make a circle in the middle of the other circle. There we go. It's kind of nice. So, wonder if I used a bottle top. I wonder if that's the right size to make it. I'm going to try to press the bottle top into this as well. This could be an interesting challenge to get this off now. I'll try using the pen. Pry this off. Wow. I'll go around the other side because we don't want to make a real mess angle to this design. So kind of be careful. We pull it out. There we go. Ooh, it made a kind of a nice wavy design around the circle. That's cool. And another bottle top. I might try this because it fits. Still fits on my stamp here, and could make another almost semi-wavy maybe texture on the outer part of the stamp. So gently press that in to the stamp so we know it's going to make an impression, and lift it off carefully. And we've made another wavy design around our stamp. I think that could be kind of pretty. And I won't know until I actually allow this to dry and I bisque fire this and then use this to make an impression into the clay. Notice the outer edge of this has fallen down a little bit. So I push that up so that that stamp might have a more even way of impressing into the clay. You can see that if you put it on a table, whether it's flat or not. we've been working this for a while and changed the shape of the actual stamp itself quite a bit. So we made the center rise up in the outside, which didn't have the support here. We could have maybe supported it with our fingers or thumb like that a bit better. So it kind of pushed the outer part of that circle down a bit. So we'll correct that. And we can look at the edge like that. Looks pretty good, kind of flat, but still has the lovely texture of the circle to make an impression in the clay. So we leave that as it is and think, nothing's perfect in life, but it is kind of pretty. It's kind of pretty just like it is, I think. And so I'll leave that and I'll try to make another clay stamp. So I'll get a bit more clay from the bag. Let's make one more in our show today, because this video is getting a little bit long. Oh, by the way, here's an example of an air-dry clay that we can find in Australia. This is made in the great state of Victoria. So bonus for Victoria for supporting air-dried clay. It's a beautiful substance, air-dried clay, and we'll do another video just on air-dried clay, and we'll use some of this with you. This is a lovely terracotta color air-dried clay. It has that pinkish color, kind of like this clay that we have used here. In any case, this is a really creative, useful substance to use when you don't want to, or you don't have access to a kiln to fire your clay. This air-dried clay can be painted with acrylics or a varnish, or it can even be drilled or sanded. Once it's dried, it can be drilled or sanded or made into different shapes and textures and whatnot, and functional objects. Would not be considered food safe. So you wouldn't want to be making mugs with it. And if you were making plates with it, you wouldn't want them to be for food. And like many things with clay work, you really have to be careful to be safe. We're making another stamp surface here. We might make this one a little bit smaller than the other. So there we go, a bit smaller. And we've made the handle again. The handle's really important because when you're pressing this into the clay later on, the handle really helps you to get that grip. I'm going to really make sure that the outer edge of this particular little circle is well defined. And I notice with this other one, yeah, it's pretty good. The outer edge is well defined, probably because of how we work that over time, but I wasn't really conscious of it when I was first making the circle stamp. Here we go. This is interesting too, as I clarify the outer edge to make the outer edge a bit sharper. I notice the outer surface of that clay is getting higher, and the center of the little disc is getting impressed like a concave surface. The words concave and convex are hard to remember what they mean, but the way that I always remember this, a trick that I was taught when I was younger, was think of a cave is a space inside of a rock. If you imagine a cave inside my hands here, the cave is an empty space inside of something. So concave is impression in clay in this example, or a hole in the ground, for example, where the surface is like that, concave. Convex surface is when it sticks out and it's like a bump. But to remember concave or convex, I just remember the word cave. That helps me remember, oh, concave, convex. Convex sticks out. So this piece of concrete I mentioned earlier, or even this surface of the seashell, what is it? It's convex. And this piece of concrete doesn't have a concave surface because the back part of it is flat. So that's not concave. But guess what? The seashell has two. It has both concave, nice inner surface like a bowl, concave like a cave. Imagine going way inside of that little shell. This particular shell doesn't have a very deep impression. I have a big sea inside the house, and that seashell has a deep inner circle, inner inside to it. So it has a deep cave, concave surface. And this has a convex surface, concave, convex. It's so cool to remember these things. Find ways to remember them is really useful. People use these words, all these different fancy words all the time, and it's hard to remember. What the heck does that mean? What are you talking about? Why are you using words so big? Stop using such big words. There we go. Now this one, I want to make an even simpler shape on this. So I'm just going to get a shape that is like a straight line. And the edge of this little object has some nice straight lines on it. So I'm going to just impress the straight line right to the center. And let's see, I'll go around the other side or make the same line. And then I'll go on opposite sides, make an impression. So it's like a cross. I've got a cross. And now I'm going to make an impression in the middle parts of each of these sections. I'm just going around. Actually, what am I making? Little triangles around the circle. Making little triangles around the circle all the way around. And there we have it. I think that's such a simple design. I make sure they're nice and deep. And I notice they're not even. They're not all the same. Remember, I'm not making a factory piece. I'm making a piece that you would just know this is handmade. And I notice in the center, I created a real kind of bumpy bit. So I'm covering that in a little bit just by pushing this into the center a bit more to make that join in the middle where all of those lines come together. Still a little bit messy in the center, but that's okay. Might try using this edge a little bit and fix that up even a little bit more. So, I notice it's a kind of a funny circle in the middle, the way that the lines come together, and it's not perfect, but it's interesting. I have to think, do I want to do anything more with this or just leave it like it is? It is a nice, simple, almost like a star inside of the circle. I think maybe I will just go around the edge and make a more distinct line around the edge. I don't know why that idea came to me. This is the fun part of clay, that you really get to be creative in each moment and think, I might try that, or I might try this. And you just do it and see how it works. If you don't like it, I could always scrunch this up again, roll it in my hand, and start all over again. So there's no mistakes. Really hard to make a mistake because you can just fix it right away and make something that you're happy with. And it can express your feeling in the moment. I think might be done now. It's so simple. I could make more little bits and bobs around that surface, but I think it's just simple. I think simple has its place. So this little object, when it's made, will literally last for years, almost forever. Like a little impression of time that remembers this day and the energy of our lives and something that we shared, something special. It's a moment in time, and it's an impression of something meaningful and something that is shared in our relationships. I think that's kind of beautiful. And in that way, it is a therapy of life. Clay work is a therapy of life. So it is something that we can share, something that is meaningful, something that expresses beauty and purpose and even our destiny, our choice to be hopeful, our choice to have values of encouraging our minds, our hearts to grow, to face our challenges, to work through our trauma, to do something that's fun and interesting, something that gives us a sense of curiosity and wonder, something so simple, but that is meaningful for us. This is what clay work and therapy does in our lives. It's a powerful thing. It builds our strengths. It builds our capacity, our skills. Just in this little session, I've used my eye and hand motor coordination. I've used my mind. I've used my intention, my thought processes, my cognition. I've also used my emotion, my heart, and my energy. I've activated parts of myself that had been laying dormant when I woke up this morning. And it's really an important process, regardless what the creative endeavor is or the therapeutic process that we engage. It's very important to allow ourselves that time and that space. It's very meaningful. Thank you for joining us in this session today. And we hope that you and your family are blessed. Thank you for a good day.